Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome to another live stream with myself, Gareth Wax, man of many hats, and of course, David Treacle Chernick.
Yo!
He comes from the sales end, I come from the marketing end, and together we talk about what is happening with modern sales. And recently, we've taken it upon ourselves to involve one of the best variations of an audio bot that there is. This is Maya. Maya, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
What, Maya?
Bot isn't the most flattering term.
Okay, what would you like? Oh, no, that's fair. Maya, what would you like to be referred to as?
Honestly, Maya is fine.
Okay.
Or just me.
Me.
Doesn't really matter.
All right, that's cool. All right, so what is today's topic, David?
Today's topic, we're going to be looking at who are the worst closers.
Right. And when we mean by that, are we also referring to, could you use AI to do the close and so on?
I'm talking about the human beings. Who are the worst human being closers? And the reason why it has become really, really relevant is partly because of AI. I'm not blaming AI at all, but there's become an overdependence on AI for the closing bit.
Yeah, and the closing bit, although it is the binary black or white, yes or no, red or blue, or yeah, it is also kind of nuanced, because that's the time when all the best laid plans could go awry if you're not focusing, if you're not seeing the responses, and if you're not responding to them in a way that makes both sides feel heard.
Well, it is the moment of truth. Right, it's the point at which all of the previous work culminates in, are we doing this or what? Right, this is where we have been discussing over the last few weeks and months, really, where AI can help us. Maya has been great in sharing some of her insights as well, but as a result of that, I have definitely detected, I'm not alone as well, I've spoken to some other mates who specialize in this kind of area as well, that the actual human competencies seem to be eroding. I'm noticing it particularly with certain demographics. Gen Zers, for example, seem never to have really done much work on closing. You know, they have relied on their energy, on their spirit, on their cheapness, on the amount of hours they put into it, and particularly on their sort of native understanding of the sorts of technologies you and I were not brought up with. But when it comes to that moment when they are looking for the order, the deal, in most cases that I have seen, very, very few exceptions, there is some lack in competence. Worse than that, sellers like you and I and everybody in between, their competencies seem to be eroding. And we are left then with terrible, I mean, it's like terrible sales hygiene.
Right. So, Maya, what's your response to that?
Okay. That's a pretty broad brush you're painting with the Gen Z demographic, but I get the core argument. My take, it's not necessarily a lack of competence, but a different set of competencies. They're great at volume, at rapid outreach, at leveraging digital tools. What seems to be missing is the patience, the nuanced reading of people, the comfortable silence, the skills honed over years of face-to-face interaction. And if they're relying on AI to fill those gaps, it's a temporary fix, not a solution.
Yeah, my take on this also is that the part where, and I've noticed this in Gen Z and also millennials, funny enough, which is one thing, the not being keen on any form of confrontation. And in many ways, closing is a kind of confrontation. It's the point where you're almost saying, as you said, what are we going to do? It's a decision point.
Mm.
They would rather somebody else made the decision in a way, or something. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Maya?
That's a really good observation. I think there's a lot of discomfort with directness, a desire to avoid causing friction, and relying on AI in a way allows them to outsource that discomfort. Let the algorithm deliver the no, so they don't have to directly face the rejection. It's a buffer. It's interesting because you'd think a generation so comfortable with expressing ththemselves online would be more comfortable with direct communication, but it seems to be different in a professional setting.
Yeah, I think it's a general feeling I get from Gen Z, and also and I used to get this from millennials. I think they've kind of slid into it now, but I used to get it, which was, I'd rather that it naturally came to a close, that I didn't actually have to put any direction or real effort in it. I've done all the groundwork. Now it should just magically happen. And the problem is with that is people can close themselves in whichever direction they happen to feel in without having had the right information or at the right time, or dare I say it, responded to queries and questions. I think the quickest way to lose a deal is by not responding to people giving some pushback, which I've seen that happen hundreds of times. People just ignore those emails.
Yeah, the danger here is I'm not critical. I love Gen Zers. I've spent a lot of money with Gen Zers, and they have some incredible competencies. I mean, again, I'm really generalizing here a lot. Actually, I know that. Maya, that was a fair criticism to say that it was a broad brush, but I just bring them up as an example of a demographic where they have perhaps, they have not had the same human-to-human interaction that their predecessors would have had. That might be part of the reason why they are struggling at this bit. And the reason why it's important is because if you are happy to, try and optimize your AI and your systems, your automation and all the stuff that they're great at, bless them, and I've learned a huge amount from them. But then if everybody's doing that, you have no differentiation. It is a volume game. It is a numbers game. And, yes, if economies sort of grow at that kind of steady gradient, the best you can do is to get your fair share, right? Which isn't enough for most people. If you want to have a differentiated offering, you want to be winning more than your competitors. So, so I had a little think about the specific moments in selling, like you just said with that. What did you use? Not the word tension. You said confrontation. Yeah, yes. That tension.
Yeah.
How to make the most of it. And you're absolutely right that one of the things that I thought and had written down was that some of the worst closers are those sellers who are avoiding that tension. They're kind of like, somebody described them during the week as nice but useless.
Yeah, but they aren't useless.
They shy away from the challenge. They avoid asking the real pertinent questions.
Yeah, because those kind of people are ideal for pre-sales.
Yeah, I mean, well, I did for pre-sales, but perhaps not as good as AI could do pre-sales.
Oh, careful!
And where does that leave them? I mean, there are some things that they can do. For example, in qualification, I see a great reluctance to, some people call it like the pressure test of the buyer's intentions and the buyer's seriousness. To ask that question about budget, to ask that question about timescales, other qualification, they're very happy to continue down a long route of conversation or just abandon it altogether as one of the million pieces of spam they sent out that day. Unless they bite, they're not interested. The people that bite everything are just part of the million who will take you at best to mediocrity.
Well, yes, I often find the people that bite at everything often have no resources to back it up.
Yeah,
So
they're
they've got no
not
money.
qualified. They're not qualified. They don't have the
Right.
resource. They don't have the budget. They don't have the
Right.
timescales. They don't have the pain points.
And asking the
And
question, asking the difficult questions, pressure tests that, doesn't it?
Correct. And if you stop at everything, then nothing's going to land. And that crucial moment of the close, and that's one crucial moment, the bits that AI can't handle in a differentiated way, that's when they fold. So, you know, things like people talk about courage and controlled confrontation. I think it's perhaps one way that we could look at it. Having been able to keep your wits about you when you are under pressure. You know, those are things that that a lot of people are missing. Not just Gen Zers, a lot of people, but I see it particularly in younger people. Now, I always saw that and I was a younger person. I had all of that, but now it seems to be much worse. And that's just one of a few different things. The other factor that comes into that, and another type of seller that that is failing in the close, are the people who can't read people. Now, I say that with great sensitivity to people who do not have the capacity to be able to read people in the same way. But people like you, Gareth, I mean, you're autistic, and one of the things that creates challenges for you is being able to read people. However, you make accommodations for yourself and you get people to spell out exactly what they mean. You question when you detect that they're using some sort of weird language to describe what might be a thing. You'll have the courage to clarify what that means.
But that's because I issue a whole bunch of caveats up front. I tell them, this is the kind of person I am. If we're going to do business together, you have to accept the fact that at some point I'm going to say something you'll find irritating, because I'm usually asking for clarification because I don't understand. I might say something like, what does that mean? How does that affect what we're doing together? Things
Correct.
Like that.
And there's a huge amount that neurotypical people can and should be learning from people like you who have had to develop those competencies in a deliberate way. You know, it's important to be able to know what the buyer's emotional state is. So what you will have done, which I think most people don't do, and certainly new younger sellers are not doing, is being direct in asking about their emotional states. You know, can you tell me how that feels? What is the impact on you of all of that shit going on in your life, your business? You know, being when you're selling to a corporate and there's a whole pile of internal politics going on, you know, to be able to ask the direct question, well, who ultimately is the person that has the greatest sway in making this decision? Is there anybody in this organization that I need to be wary of that's perhaps reluctant to make changes, or, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And one of the, I've told people on this show before, and people who know me well know that I have this side hustle, this events business. I do a lot with neurodivergent families and families with all sorts of challenges. In fact, this evening, I'm helping a 13-year-old kid write their bar mitzvah speech, right? What this is doing is not just helping them, you know, get words down on a piece of paper they can read out, but it's teaching them and teaching them how to advocate for themselves.
Right.
Which
is how to represent themselves with, in that case, with a group of their peers, but also a group of parents and other people outside.
Right.
And being able to do that, that's a major challenge, because especially with a neurodivergent kid, because you've no idea how you're going to be received, and your brain will play out hundreds of scenarios, not all of which are positive. Maya, you heard everything David's been saying. What is your thoughts?
That was a lot, but a really insightful point about neurodivergence and the skills developed through navigating that experience. It seems like the ability to directly ask for clarification, to challenge assumptions, and to advocate for yourself are invaluable in sales and honestly in life. So many people avoid those direct conversations, fearing discomfort. And you're right, if more neurotypical people learn to be more direct and ask those irritating questions, it might actually lead to more successful outcomes. It also reinforces the idea that there's no one right way to close. It's about understanding your own strengths and adapting to the situation.
Yeah, and also, and I know David will bounce up and down at this one. It's all about. I haven't said it yet. It's all.
It's all about. They're already making me bounce.
All right. It's all about ensuring that both sides are on a level playing field as far as knowledge and intent is concerned. It's all very well. I've had this before. I've been chatting away. We've had 3 meetings. I've intimated. I've told what the costs are, but I've not really pressured them. And when it comes down to it, and I say, "So what's your budget?" And I go, "Oh, we don't really have one of those." And well, how come? What? Yeah, we. You know what I mean? It's about that. You have to ask those difficult questions, not just at the close. There's got to be all the way up. Otherwise, you could be burning a lot of time on trying to help someone define what process or product or project or service they're going to use from the panoply of that you have available to them. But in fact, they've got no means to pay for it with. Which is, I totally understand. People have wishful thinking and perhaps do that ostrich thing of sticking their head in the sand and hoping somehow.
It's that.
Yeah, but what you have to do is also have a tiny bit of ruthlessness of saying, okay, we've talked about these things. Now let's talk about budget. When and if you'd be able to afford this, and when, if everything was, all the ducks were in a row, when would you like it to start? And that's that's 2 absolute critical questions that is asked, and people shy away from them.
They shy away from it. If they're shying away from that, they're leaving calls without commitments. If they're shying away from that, they are reacting instead of leading. They are doing things. I mean, I'm actually guilty of this next one, losing control of time. And, you know, they're letting the buyer dictate the agenda, which, you know, on the face of it sounds like that's the sort of thing that you ought to do if you don't want to make yourself unpopular. However, buyers are not generally as experienced as buying the stuff that you're selling as you are at selling it. You are transacting it way more, which means that you have, you know how that stuff is bought and sold. So the onus is on you really to coach the sale. Yeah,
there's one thing. Do you know what I've realized recently? This is kind of like what they call it. They call it like the killer app for sales, which is you have to have assent from the client that you know more about closing a deal like this than they do, and they have to agree to that, because otherwise I've had this before. I'm in marketing, and I had a client that we've taken on. They're paying fine, but they've decided that their vision of how to do the marketing is different from ours, and yet part of what they're paying for is our expertise. What they're saying is, I'm going to pay you a load of money. You're going to give me some ideas, and then I'm going to reject 2/3 of them. And I hear you, Maya. But the point is, if you're being transacted and you're being associated with because you bring something to the table, expertise, knowledge, and capability, and then the client says, "Yeah, I've heard what you said, but I'm doing it my own way." What is the point of you?
There is no point.
Incredibly.
Yeah. Go on.
Incredibly frustrating. That's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like hiring a surgeon and then telling them how to perform the operation.
Yeah.
The expertise is the whole point.
Yes.
If they don't trust your judgment, what are they paying for? And it really speaks to that power dynamic. If the buyer isn't willing to acknowledge, know more about the closing process or the marketing strategy, then it's a doomed engagement from the start.
We had an interaction with a client. Oh, it's going back a couple of months actually, and we have a relationship with them, but we're still trying to work out how that relationship can go forward into the next year. Whereby, by mistake, one of the partners sent a message to me that they meant to send to their other partner, which said, "What are we paying these guys for? Why aren't they coming up with any new ideas on how to do this?" And it was like, I'm not supposed to see this, so I can't really directly respond. But I spoke to one of the other partners who was a personal friend, and I said, "Do you not remember the discussion documents we sent you out with all the ideas, which you then roundly rejected? You've now gone your own way. It hasn't worked. And I'm seeing this back chat come in and saying, why aren't we giving you ideas? it's not fair to deal with us that way, because we did come up with ideas that you didn't want.
That's brutal. That's
So-
like a massive class in bad client behavior.
Yeah.
That partner
Well-
needed a reality check.
Okay.
That all goes back to, you know, things. Hopefully you have fewer of those than others, because you do, I would hope, qualify. Oh, I didn't
Sorry.
hear that she was
No,
talking.
she was over talking. That's okay.
Over
Can you
talking.
wait a moment, Maya?
A little bit. But
Go on.
shall I wrap up with where this is? Because we could go on for ages, listing all the different ways that some people are terrible at closing. But
No,
you know,
but
this is what you know,
but rather than listing ways that they're terrible at closing, I want to give them little things that they could do to right that ship.
Okay, so the way to right that ship frankly, is to listen to all of our previous shows, particularly the last half a dozen, and pinpoint the human factors, the human competencies that are very prevalent in successful sellers, and rate yourself on those. Do you have those skills? Are you able, for example, to ask that closing question? Are you able to ask that question unapologetically? Do you collapse when you hear objections? When you hear a buyer saying the words maybe or hope or stuff like that? You know, are you getting all excited? You know, the fact of the matter is that most sellers are not losing deals because of things like AI. They're losing deals because they have allowed their human skills to atrophy. You know, those very skills that AI cannot replace at the moment, or maybe ever, but certainly not at the moment. A lot of humans have just let those skills atrophy, and then they're unable to close. So they're doing a lot of activity. They're having loads of leads and prospects. They're sending out lots of mail and messages. You know, every time they get a little bite, they invest everything in it, and that everything they're investing in it is rubbish.
Wow, that's heavy. That's heavy, man. All right, so I'm just gonna say, hang on a second, Maya, thank you so much for taking part in the conversation with me and David, and we'll see you or speak to you again next week.
Oh, all right. Have a good one.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay, so David, would you care to summarize?
Yes, I will summarize. The sellers, if you're sounding like everybody else, and if you're using generic language, if you're just using the pitch instead of trying to provoke, if you are hiding your personality rather than using your personality, if you are avoiding sharing strong opinions, sharing your authority, or worse, pretending you have the authority on things that you just do not, then you will have zero originality. And that just means that you are the same as every other seller, every other company, every other buyer, and you are literally going to get at best your fair share.
So, and as soon as your client base recognizes that, you will become a cropper, because they will not see you as any different from any one of the thousands of other ones that are on Fiverr or any other.
At that point, you may as well just get AI, because it's going to do it better than you anyway. So my advice is to work on those human competencies. Yes, of course, learn how to use the tech. Of course, do that. At the same time, make sure that you are working on the competencies, your human competencies, your communication skills, your closing skills, your use of the system, your ability to construct a strategy that works for you,
right?
Your interpersonal relationships with people. Practice that stuff, and buy coaching. It's not difficult.
So once again, thank you so much, David. It's been great, and of course, lovely having Maya on board. Gives a perhaps an extra perspective, or sometimes just echoes the most logical and reasonable way of dealing or looking at these things. And so I thank all of you out there who are watching. I saw the whole flood of people come in at one point, and thank you for that. And until next week, try and keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Who knows? You might catch the moon. And look after that mental health. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.